Hey, what's up, guys? Matt Wylde. It's been a long time since I've used that name. Sitting here right now with my tag team partner for the brand new Blown Spot Pro Wrestling Podcast. My tag team partner. You guys know him from What's Your Effin' Bitch podcast. Of course, he's going by a little different name today, Mr. Christopher Michaels.
Old name from way the fuck back.
And of course, why are we going by old gimmick names, old character names? Well, because we're going to be talking pro wrestling, and nothing makes me feel older than talking to an old tag team partner of mine who started his career as a love genie, got a little darker from it, then all of a sudden became, well, somebody who was addicted to champagne, liked to bring heat, and now is just a homicidal half-breed, Mr. Tony Moralas. Tony, how you doing?
How's it? Doing good, man. Long time no talk. Shoot.
Yeah, very long time. Now, for those that may not be familiar, but listening in may not be familiar, Tony is a professional wrestler from the Colorado territories. However, that's obviously not where he spends his whole entire career. Just his. It's fair to say your home territory, correct?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Been
right. Been back for almost 10 years now. So.
10 years. Where were you for a while?
I was in Amarillo, Texas for about 4 years.
The Blanchard stomping grounds. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'll learn quick that my boy here is an encyclopedia of old school men.
I'm a throwback machine, bro. I promise you. You bring up something, I know something from the 70s or 50s about it or whatever.
Hey, that worked for me. Shoot.
Yeah.
And just for everybody to know, we are also going to be live on Twitch. You can find it at twitch.tv/WildHighPlays. The link is being posted to my Facebook account, Christopher Michaels Stolle. It is up and live now, so you guys can join the fun and the conversation. If you have any questions for Mr. Moralas or myself or Mr. Richards, please feel free to comment down below. But yeah, let's get down to brass tacks, Tone. All right, what made you even want to become a professional wrestler? Let's jump right to it.
I was an old school fan, man. I grew up in the '80s. I was a big, liked Hogan. Was a big fan of Brutus the Barber Beefcake, actually, which is got me some looks over the years.
Well, yeah, you don't expect a lot of people to choose Beefcake as their number one wrestler.
Yeah, but it was the '80s. He was walking around cutting people's hair. For a 6 to 8 year old kid, that was awesome.
It was a cool gimmick back then in the cartoon days.
Fair enough. All right.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, got in from, loved it from there. Had a couple of friends I grew up with. We did a little bit of wrestling. We called it basement wrestling. Backyard, whatever you want to refer to it as.
Right.
I ended up was a big fan of Shane Helms from the old WCW, Little Sugar Shane. And turns out he was actually wrestling locally between the downfall of WCW and going to WWE. And I happened to hear about it off his website and got my friend to drive me up there, and we went and saw the show and talked to some people. A couple, people you remember, obviously, Corpse, Psycho Sarge.
Right.
Talked to them from there. Did some searching around, found the old RMCW training academy, and kind of just went from there.
Who'd you school with, man? Who actually worked you between the ropes?
Matt helped me out quite a bit, actually. The official trainer was what was it? Good old Robert.
Robert Amador, Shock Therapy, not Shock Therapy, yeah, Super Destroyer.
Super Destroyer, actually, yeah, Robert Amador. I could never remember his last name to save my life. But yeah, fun story, Amador. Actually. Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away
in all honesty.
6 or 7 years ago now.
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been gone a while, unfortunately. Yeah. Great dude. In all honesty, probably one of the biggest bullshitters I've ever met, and I completely and utterly mean that as a compliment.
The man can spin a yarn, but he can mess you up if you try to call him out on it.
Oh yeah.
I have living proof. I still remember one match, one of those one of those crazy matches Queen Maeve
Oh,
came
yeah.
up with that show where I took a concussion and have no memory of this match at all because I pissed him off one day.
Yeah.
It's awesome to hear somebody else use that line.
No, yeah, I went up there, freaking drove my car up there. Within like, I think in a day or two, I had actually gotten pulled over and found out that I apparently no longer had a license because I used to speed because I was young and dumb, and had to take a bus to the Greyhound station because I lived in Colorado Springs. Take the Greyhound to Denver, then take a taxi cab to the training center, and I would do that twice a week for about 8 months or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that because I think it was a couple times I would, when I had a vehicle, I would drive you to the Greyhound station or whatever, or on the rare occasion because my mother lived in Colorado Springs, I would actually drive him home if it was like I was heading down to visit her anyway.
Yeah.
Rare occasion. I forgot about that actually. But all right. So yeah, you definitely had a lot of hands in, but
it was ridiculous, freaking to do that. Get home at like midnight every night.
And at the time, you were still holding down a regular 9 to 5. Correct?
I actually had 2 jobs at the time. I was a lifeguard in the morning, and then I was working for Walgreens in the photo department in the afternoon.
So you were maintaining 2 jobs plus chasing this dream. Like, was it really that important to you, or was it just something that's like, it's something to do?
No, I loved it, man. I was all about it. It was, for being a kid, didn't really know what I wanted to do other than be a wrestler.
Right. Well, that explains why you're still doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as of 2-3 weeks ago, I'm 18 years officially.
18 years. Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for
18
making
years in the ropes, huh? That's cool.
Thank you for making me feel that much older. Yes. This
You're
asshole.
old Ben.
This asshole. Okay, when I was working with him, I was in my 20s, and he was the only one to make me feel like shit on my 25th birthday, because everybody else just happy birthday, happy birthday. This little jerk off would come around, happy quarter of a century. Yeah,
that's all right.
But no, all right. So, what was your first match? Refresh my memory.
Oh my! First match was at Sheridan Rec Center. I was doing like you were so gracious to point out. I was Raheem the Love Genie.
I didn't come up with that.
Wrestle Queen Maeve. No, you came up with the catchphrase though, if you remember.
I don't remember it. No, what was it?
It was slow, medium, and your wish was my command.
Oh shit! Oh my God, was that me? Really?
That was you. Yeah.
There sounds like there's some big Papa Pump influence going on there.
It was off of something. I can't remember the exact reference, but it was a reference from some movie.
Probably a fucking Kevin Smith thing.
Probably. We were all about it back then. Shoot, you were actually the guy that got me into all the Kevin Smith movies, all the View Askews.
Nice. So anyway, yeah. So your first match as Raheem the Love Genie, you're taking on Queen Maeve, who, by the way, stuck him with that gimmick to begin with. If memory serves correctly, that was Maeve's brainchild.
Mm-hmm.
And
she did make the boots, the horn tipped and everything.
Yeah. Took a pair of old combat boots and gave him the curled toe.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was.
I know two or three guys ended up using those boots afterwards, and I believe the horns are still there.
Jesus Christ, that's hilarious.
She does good work. What can I say?
So anyway, yeah. So you spent some time as Raheem the Love Genie. How long did you spend in that gimmick?
Not very. I think Raheem was maybe 5 matches
before he got turned a little darker.
I think it was 5 matches before we transferred to the gin. Yeah.
That sounds like Christopher Michaels' career.
Well, Raheem was a great gimmick. It really was, but it wasn't a serious gimmick. It wasn't meant to be serious, and obviously that was a role you really wanted to take.
I don't know. I looking back now, I wish I'd have given. Yeah, I was not a fan. It was like right after the bombing, or the plane crash in 2001,
mm-hmm.
and you know, I wasn't. My dad's friggin' 20-year military man, and I didn't feel comfortable with the gimmick. Like looking back now, you know, like most rookies do when they're given an off-the-wall gimmick. You know, I'd wish I'd have gone back and really done something with it.
Well, kind of you did
But,
when you dropped the red and yellow, the Hogan colors, for purple and black, and changed Rahim to Malik Abu Rahim, the Jinn. Now let's talk about that gimmick.
The gym was fun.
Let's talk about that gimmick.
Yeah.
That gimmick is one of the first times.
It was, again, Queen Maeve.
It was Queen Maeve, but really it was because Queen Maeve wanted to. Queen Maeve could no longer actively wrestle in the business because she had a brain aneurysm that she actually survived. But she still wanted to be involved in wrestling in some ways, so she wanted to manage, and she approached me and Tom into coming up with alternate, more gothic, anti-Christ style gimmicks to be a tag team under her management, and we were able to darken the Love Genie into the Jinn, and I took on the moniker of the 13th Apostle, and Tony and I became a fairly competent tag team known as the Fallen. I'm leaving the dramatic pause for you to choose from there.
That's actually a pretty cool gimmick name, actually.
Yeah, no, the Fallen was great. It was, you know, the first real time that we'd gotten any real momentum. I felt like in the crowd, though, you know, for what we were able to pull at the time, the crowd was really into that gimmick. Among, you know, more so than most of the other ones.
Oh, absolutely. And how long did you run as the Jinn, whether as the Fallen or individually, separately?
I don't think we other than when we lost the tag titles. I think it was the only maybe two matches as a Jinn, without doing it as a singles.
Okay.
So.
I wish I could claim the same, but unfortunately, the Apostle had a career beyond the Fallen. People loved it.
Going from that gimmick, and you launched the Straps as the tag team unit of the Fallen. What did that transition you to your first push as a singles guy?
Not really. I think I'd actually left. No, the Federation had actually closed because it was Rocky Mountain Championship Wrestling at that time.
Rocky Mountain, I remember Rocky Mountain, yeah.
Yep, and then with the rise of the NWA affiliates, with the start of TNA, they started doing all these. You could own the NWA for X amount of dollars,
yes.
blah blah blah.
Yes.
And somebody had come in and started NWA Rocky Mountain, and they had picked and chose which talents they wanted and which talents they, quite frankly, did not want to use. And unfortunately, the Fallen were on the chopping block.
Even though at the time we were probably one of the more hotter properties in RMCW at the time, and that's not talking ego. That's just for what the roster had. Surprisingly, we were not only a solid tag team.
Yeah, we were definitely one of the hottest acts.
We were a fan favorite for.
Well, the thing was, we weren't exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but we were not an office favorite. Was what the problem was.
No, that's exactly it.
There were definitely two distinct, sections of the RMCW locker room. There were those who were, liked by the office, and those who were not. And we were definitely the rebels of the group.
Which, of course,
putting it nicely.
Which, of course, later led to a solid career as Champagne Tony Moralas, which you were kind of doing behind the scenes besides the Jinn. When you first were breaking away from Rahim was really kind of where you birthed Tony Moralas, correct? Hello?
Actually, no. It was a funny thing was Tony Moralas was actually what I did in the backyard.
Okay.
That was my original idea when I was.
So Tony Moralas was your original gimmick. Growing up, wrestling in the backyard in the basement. That's what you called yourself. Was that?
Yeah.
Who was that a tribute to?
Just kind of messing around, actually. It was my middle name and my mother's
Okay,
maiden
my
name.
first,
And the champagne part actually came from I had an old English or social studies teacher, and he always called me Champagne Tony after a famous golfer, if I remember correctly.
Okay. I see. I never got where the champagne part came from.
Yeah.
All right.
whenever
kinda like
Chris
the way
told
it
me you were
flowed.
going by Morales, the first question was, is that a tribute to Pedro? But
No, actually, I get that a lot. Actually, people would always ask me at random shows if Pedro Morales was my grandfather, and no, there's no actual blood relation between the two of us.
What is ironic though is I do remember
the
him
first,
playing a mask gimmick once in a while for battle royals. That was Pedro Morales
No, it's Pedro Escobar.
or Pedro Escobar. That's right.
Yeah, which nobody told me was a famous drug dealer.
he was. Yeah. Let me introduce you to this little show called Narcos. And,
Yeah, I know. Now I know.
Oh man,
Now,
but
there's three Escobar brothers. There was Pablo, Pedro, and Angel, and we were the amazing high-flying Escobar brothers.
Of the Escobars, Angel was actually the most cutthroat of killers, which is kind of crazy knowing the stories about Pablo and everything. But Angel was considered to be the most psychotic of the three.
Oh, I didn't actually realize Angel Escobar was a part of this as well. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I apparently need to watch more television.
there you go. So yeah, Champagne was starting to have his own career, which later led to you were mentioning about the Rebels, which led to the resurrection of a gimmick I ran out here in Philadelphia that had an unceremonious ending at the time, and probably one of the funnier gimmicks that we would pull on people. Of course, we're talking about the rebirth of YGW. How did you feel about Champagne's turn in that aspect? In which case, he was taking on more of a comical approach.
Yeah, unfortunately, we never really got that off the ground as much as I think either one of us would have liked. But it was the two of us and Paul Diamond.
You, me, Paul Diamond, and we were constantly torturing people like Jerry Snowbarger at Max Mages. I'll never forget the fallen deviled ham. That whole bit.
That was the classic bit. All the gimmicks.
I forget the reason why we were doing it, but it was a gimmick where we came out with like a shopping cart full of shit. And it was like YGW was trying to sell shit. And we were just throwing our label on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think it was just to entertain ourselves, basically. I think the whole thing was we were trying to do like the old merchandise thing.
Yeah, we were
trying to sell everything we could.
We were pulling the whole Public Enemy thing. So it's like the official YGW ham, the official YGW soda, the official YGW toilet paper, and then we come across a can of deviled ham. We're like, fallen deviled ham. How'd that get in there?
Toilet paper these days. Shoot. Mm-hmm.
Stupid shit like that, and we almost took a Ted DiBiase approach to it too, because didn't we buy like the ring announcer and the referee and shit? Like Max Mages at the time was the referee, and he'd walk around with a price tag on his earring.
Oh God, that's right. Oh.
Or if you remember
that, all about that. Shoot.
Or if you remember that time we were doing shows where we were giving away, shows were giving away free beer. And there was a tip cup. Like, you couldn't buy the beer because you had to have a license to buy beer. Mm-hmm. So you buy a ticket, you got the beer for free. But we was encouraged to tip the bartender, the guy, giving out the beer. Well, I got it in my head to put in an official YGW tip cup and put it right next to it, and we made more money than the bartender. Remember that?
I remember somehow at the end of that night, I still ended up getting beer spit in my face from somebody. Probably Prodigy.
But
did you at least split your tip with the bartender?
Oh, we gave it to him. It was his. We thought it'd be funny to put it there. We weren't gonna take the money away from him. That was his tip money. We just wanted to see who would make more. And And the reason I bring all this up and bringing this real quick is because now we're going to dig into the meat and potatoes of the career that that I
might
really
have spoiled
don't
them
know.
later, but it was all in fun.
It was all in fun. But so now
Okay.
with the ending of YGW and the end of the tenure that you and I had together, this is where we get into the meat and potatoes. Where did your career go from here? Like, what led to the Heatseeker and then obviously to the homicidal half-breed type characters? Like, where have you gone from the RMCW days?
Well, with after RMCW, because I was the interregional champion back then, and I'd lost the belt and I'd left because of I think work scheduling, because we were always running on those we were on like Thursday nights, and I couldn't maintain it.
Right.
Well, I had started training with the Altitude Pro Wrestling Academy under Psycho Sergeant Billy V, and because they had started Fusion, and whether it was right or not, which will always be up for debate. Those guys would get in your head that you were the best if you trained with them.
Right.
Like I said, whether or not that was true, they would tell you and you would believe it. Was what it was. But I definitely felt like it did give me a different aspect of training, because I'd train anywhere I could. That was always my goal. And you would give me, kind of a different take on stuff, being from the East Coast. And Sarge had given me a different take because he had gone and trained with Les Thatcher.
Right.
And then, on top of that, Sarge was also bringing in, he would bring in guys like Les Thatcher and guys like Harley Race for 3-4 day seminars, and then they would do the show and then critique you, and it helped me grow. So I jumped on that. And the thing with Fusion at the time is in state they'd have if you were going to train there, you were exclusive, which again fed into the whole we're better than everybody else mentality, whether it was right or wrong.
Right. That was always something I battled against in Colorado, which again goes back to like you were saying how we weren't exactly like the front office's boys, because independent circuit, the one thing you are not is, unless you're paying my bills, I am not exclusive. I go where the work is. So how'd that work out for you with them telling you had to be exclusive to work their shows?
We weren't the most well-liked guys. So
in the territories, especially in the independents in the 21st century now, the last 20 years, the front office boys, and then also being a front office non-favorite could be pretty damaging to keep you off cards.
Unfortunately, we were definitely victims of that. I
guarantee
in Fusion, though, we were able to. That was when I kind of took the reins a little bit for a lot of the newer guys, and I was actually, the guy getting a hold of people out of state, and that's when we were traveling every weekend. We'd go to Texas, or we'd go to Kansas, or we would drive 20 hours to California and work for All Pro Wrestling.
Right.
Oh, you did some cards for All Pro? How'd that go?
It was great. We just did one, unfortunately.
Okay.
Which actually led to a great story about breaking into a houseboat in Wyoming.
Awesome. That is a good story.
No, funny. Yeah, we were driving up there, and JDT's car, which of course was his mother's car, so we were all like early 20 kids, blah blah blah. One of the engine messed up, and we got stuck overnight because they couldn't get to us in the morning because it was like maybe midnight by the time when everything had happened. So we had nothing better to do and about 8 hours to kill, and they just left us in this big barren field, and there happened to be a houseboat there. We figured, hey, there's probably a bed in that houseboat, and we might have broken in there.
Well, they deserve it for leaving the boat out in the middle of a fucking field. My first guess was there's not any lakes in Wyoming that you would just find a houseboat on, so this had to be on someone's property, but I didn't want to jump in there with that.
Yeah. And why would you have a houseboat in Wyoming? What's the benefit of living in Wyoming, let alone having a houseboat in Wyoming? I'm just saying, it just makes sense.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So we ended up sleeping there. We ended up I think me and one other guy stayed up, like we slept in shifts, just to be on the safe side in case, for the love of God, somebody came back to this houseboat in Wyoming that night.
Yeah, because maybe it
next
was
morning
broken
they
down
got
too.
Yeah. So
Like, what
next
if you
morning they
woke
got the
up in the
serpentine
morning
belt
and
fixed and we were on our way.
being from that highway?
So, yeah.
Like, if
The
you
whole
wake
thing's
up in the
insane.
morning and you're both being towed down the highway, waking up in these fucking bunk beds, and you're like, what the hell? You're like
Exactly.
100 miles away from where you left your car. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So.
All right, so I definitely gotta ask. At what point did you drop the Champagne moniker and go with the more and explain to me, because I think I understand it, but for everybody else, the moniker of the Heatseeker. Like, when did the personality change? Which to me, the Heatseeker was kind of a heel gimmick, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Oh yeah, it was definitely a heel gimmick, and a lot of it was, at the time I was like maybe $170. And I feel, everyone was like, oh, you can't be a heel, blah, blah, blah. You're a good-looking kid. You got the hair, blah, blah, blah. I don't have the hair. I'm not good-looking anymore, whatever. But, so they were like, you're not going to be a good heel. But the whole thing was I had like an 8-month feud with JDT. And the whole gimmick was I couldn't beat him. Finally beat him. And then later that night, Paul Diamond had actually beaten Jeff McAllister, Psycho Sarge, for the Fusion title.
Wow.
And
okay.
the whole thing was, after that, McAllister was putting the boots to him because he was pissed that he lost, blah, blah, blah. And then I came out with a chair, make the save, big hero, blah, blah, blah. I turn around and lay the ever-living crap out of Paul Diamond with that chair. So much so that 30 minutes after that, because of course it was the main event, it was a title match, the crowd had not left. They actually had to announce that Paul Diamond was at a local hospital, he was A-OK, and, please go home.
Did you split him?
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't a little animosity in there, was there?
All right.
Like a cantaloupe.
Yeah, get some fucking juice in there, man. Shit.
Oh, yeah.
Was there a little animosity in there? Was that
awesome?
Was that an oops, or was that a?
Just had to do what it had to do. Just had to do what had to be done. I need, this is my one shot to prove them wrong.
And prove them wrong.
A half hour later, they knew.
Yeah, you're trying to prove to the boys there that you could bring the heat to be the heel, so you had to take that shot.
But yeah, I get it. The name Heatseeker was actually a huge inside joke. Because, like I said, me and, they were bringing legends like Les Thatcher to do training seminars. So me and Les always constantly had a love-hate relationship.
All right.
Some days he thought I was amazing. Some days he couldn't stand me. Kind of funny how that constantly seems to work out. But whatever. But, no, going back to the Brutus Beefcake comment. So Les got in there and freaking, asked all the guys, who was your favorite wrestler, blah, 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 who's your guy growing up? And everybody and their mother's giving all these generic, of course they are, answers. Oh, I love Hulk Hogan. Oh, I love Shawn Michaels. Oh, I love Macho Man Randy Savage. I bust out Brutus Beefcake.
I'm imagining like the whole entire training facility just stops.
Yeah. It was what it was. I didn't care. It's truth. I easily could have been like, oh, Shawn Michaels, Eddie Guerrero. Who doesn't love Eddie Guerrero? Jesus, he's the greatest of all time in my opinion. But, this was, who'd you like growing up? So freaking later on, we're taking like a restroom break, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in the restroom. Les Thatcher comes in, he doesn't see me. And here he is, talking mess, being like, who the hell says Brutus Beefcake?
He probably thought you were like bullshitting, like it was.
And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me! Like, really? This upset you to that point?
Well, again, he probably thought you weren't taking it seriously.
For the record, nobody gives a crap about work rate when you're 8 years old. Nobody cares about work rate when you're 8. I don't care. Shoot, my kid loves Orange Cassidy. I'm not even saying he's a bad wrestler, but it's a gimmick. I ain't mad about it. He's 5. He can like whoever he likes.
So,
I also like Darby Allin.
to ask you something a little bit more inside the rope here, this is something that I always bring up with any of the workers or any of the boys whenever I talk to them. You've got 18 years in between the ropes. Obviously, you've probably spent a little bit of time on the shelf here and there, but you've also had some straps. You've had some tag team titles, and you've had some individual titles. Has there ever been a time, obviously, you haven't gone through he's living his boyhood dream, Shawn Michaels is the WWE World Champion, but has there ever been a time when someone has put the strap on you that has meant the most?
In all honesty, I currently work for New Era Wrestling in Colorado. And that's probably when I won the heavyweight title there for the first time. That was probably the biggest, just because it was the first main title I'd held in Colorado. So
Okay.
I'd been a world champion in South Dakota, which didn't mean anything. I've been a champion in Texas a bunch of times. But that first one, like in Colorado, in front of like friends and whatnot, was probably the sweetest one, I'd say.
Can I just correct one thing on that though? I mean,
that?
you were a champion in Colorado. Well, tag team, but you were a tag team champion in Colorado. That didn't count.
Well, that's what I meant though. I meant no, I said the main belt though.
Oh, you mean as far as like solo?
Focus of a champion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Like no,
Yeah,
dude, I love tag team wrestling. That's I'm doing that now. I'm still doing that now. Like I've got, I think me and my tag team partner, Cumberbatch, we have like 3 sets of tag belts right now. One in Wyoming, one in Colorado, and one in Texas.
Nice.
Because getting that, not getting the bullshit world title in South Dakota or whatever, but getting the heavyweight strap in your hometown promotion there in Colorado, you've come and gone, come back, and now here you are. You're reached a point in your life where you can actually wrestle as a heavyweight, get the heavyweight strap. And we all know what that means, that, the promoter's putting the strap on you, and it's like, okay, son, you're going to sell some tickets for us. And you're kind of the front runner for a minute. That was, in your mind, that's the biggest achievement so far, or that's the best feeling for getting the belt?
As far as the belt goes, that's probably the best. I'd had a shot with Ring of Honor in like 2010, and I actually did the initial, when they used to do the tryouts every 3 months or so.
Right.
I actually went to that, the very first one, which is funny because it turned out there was guys like they were
was that in Minneapolis?
Was
that one in Minneapolis or what?
That was actually in Philadelphia.
Philly. Okay. All right.
But yeah, there was guys there. Like I think one of the Heartthrobs was there for the old WWE tag team in like 2008.
Really?
And like, yeah, he was the Antonio Thomas was his name.
Okay.
And cool guy. Like I talked to him. We talked a little bit after everything went down. But like he was the closest thing to like a name guy that was in the initial class. But afterwards, like I found out later, like Matt Taven was there, Mike Kanellis was there, Brutal Bob Evans was there, and they were all guys that hadn't really done anything as of yet.
Right, but they had worked on the main roster. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, a couple of them had, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd all go on to be substantially bigger stars. And I had met Adam Pearce there. And that was really super cool because I've always been a big fan of Adam Pearce's work that I've seen. But I had actually worked and he was a booker at the time. And we had worked a show later on in Kansas for NWA Central States. And they were like, they wanted me to do a spot with him, take his pile driver or whatever. So I made a point to come up to him and I was like, hey, I know. Because he was the NWA World Champion at the time on top of being the booker for Ring of Honor.
Okay.
So I went to him and I was like, hey, I know this is a big deal, blah, blah, blah. But I had taken a pile driver 1,000,000 times. But I made a point to ask him, hey, I know this is important to you, and it's important to me. How would you like me to take it? Just to be on the safe side. And, I think he was impressed by that.
That's showing the proper respect, man. That's a good way to do it. That's definitely a good way to make it in, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, apparently it ended up working out in my favor because afterwards he remembered me from the tryout. Like, we didn't really talk at the tryout itself, but he knew who I was, and he told me if you can get to Philly, I'll use you. It's not going to be like, you're not going to be a star or anything. You'll be an underneath guy, but if you get up there, spot's yours.
And did you?
So that was,
Did you ever pick him up on it?
I should have, and I didn't. Before I could get up there, he'd actually lost the position to head booker.
Yeah, the whole booker position, man, that's just such a fleeting moment for so many people, unless you're talking like the old school days. Like nowadays in modern wrestling history, with all the agents working backstage and everybody doing development and all that other stuff, like the booker is not nearly the prestigious. Well, it's still prestigious, but it just doesn't get held as long as it used to. Like if you're the booker now, like that's a 3 to 6 month gig maybe. It used to be, like back in the day, like Dusty had the book in Mid-Atlantic territory for like 5 years. And Flair had the book in whenever they switched over to WCW, he had the book there for the last couple years of NWA, the first couple years of WCW. Like guys held that for years. Whenever I went through school with Dutch, he had the book here in in Memphis Wrestling. So and he had it for years. And it always swapped between him and Dundee and Lawler, but Dutch had it for quite a while. So and it's just not that way anymore.
And then he had it in TNA for a bit, too, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he did have it in TNA. And I think that's where, in a lot of, especially if you're looking at the show, any of the big shows, and with some of the indies, these booker positions not being held for an extended period of time is why so many gimmicks don't really get the lifespan that they need to really get over the way that they could, because you have a new book coming in, and it's like reset the fucking deck, and everybody's back to square one except for his hand-picked favorite, who might have been whenever he was coming in, or it might be someone that he's bringing in with him. And it has really changed the business the past 20 years. It really has.
Well, and it totally leaves the locker room up in an upheaval, too, because like if the three of us, let's say we were bookers, and if we have the exact same roster, no matter what, I'm going to have my favorites, and each of you guys are going to have each of your favorites, and it's not going to be the same show at some level. We may have the same top guy, maybe the same middle group.
We're never going to have the same show twice. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It can fix problems, but it can also cause so many more.
Well, another issue with Booker status that I've always battled with in my 20+ years in the business. And Tony will remember this. I always had an issue with this, is I never agreed with an active worker being a booker, because the active worker is always going to push himself first, always, and that's something that I think kills the position in its own right too, because of because they're always out putting the straps on them, giving them the main event status or the strongest storyline status. And everybody else almost seems like a second thought to furthering their own career.
Yeah, it's them and the buddies.
Yeah, definitely. And this goes to the Hulk Hogan discussion we're going to have later. Very much so. But, an active guy carrying the book nowadays is so much, because there's just not enough talent to go around in each one of the promotions. Everybody's looking for their shot to get to the show, whether that's AEW or Ring of Honor or, the biggest one with WWE. Everyone's looking for the quickest path to put themselves over to get that big burst, so that way they can put a highlight tape together and show the tape to, the guys at ROH or AEW or back in the day, ECW. Like if I can get my tape in front of Paul Lee Dangerously where I win the belt because my buddy's the booker and he put me over, like that's the shortest path to get moved up to the next promotion. And it's not like it was back in the old territory days. No matter who the fuck you were, no matter who carried the book, you had to get stretched and you had to get worked and you had to go through your paces, no matter what. But now there's always like this shortcut mentality.
Yeah, it's true.
No, I think it grounds more ego actually though, because like I've helped out a little bit with the book, and like the first thing I see, like if I get a tape from a guy coming in, is if it's a title match, it's almost like or if they're wrestling a name, it's
yeah, it's so
no matter what, it's the other guy, right? It's the other guy calling the match.
Yeah, that's what everybody does. So whenever you see that, you're like, oh fuck, here we go. You know, instead of seeing them take a L and having to put somebody else over and actually have to work some chains and some moves and, you know, go down, they always want to show themselves getting over and picking up the strap. Well, everybody gets that chance if you spend enough time in. You know, everybody sees that. So show me how you put someone else over. Show me how you work the crowd in their favor. That's what actually gets their fucking attention.
Yeah.
But people lose sight of that very quickly.
That was one of my own downfalls in my career. That was one of my own downfalls in my career. Is I would do when I did a tape, I wouldn't do names. I wouldn't do winning the tag straps or the interregional strap, anything like that. I would do a couple. Mine would be a clip show, and a couple of them would be me on the offensive, just showing off like some of my special, you know, like my finisher or whatever, so they knew what to expect as far as what I used offensively. But majority of it was me taking just outrageous or insane bumps for somebody else. Like, for example, Tony remembers this, that neck breaker of fucking Shama Tangos that he'd like to do, where he'd have me sitting on the top rope.
Oh, the Martinete.
The Martinete, yeah. That fucking move. And not to pat myself on the back, but I always made it look like he fucking killed me. You know, so that always wound up in my highlight reel, and I think that worked against me though, because people looked at those videos and it's just like, oh, okay, he can bump, so he'll do the job for this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. Like, I don't think I always fought.
Do you think that they maybe ended up looking at it like, okay,
he's a good jobber?
Do you think they
is essentially what I thought with the tape. I think you have to have a healthy balance. You know,
right? I was getting ready to say that.
Good.
Did you end up putting yourself in the light where it looks like you're a high spot or a good bumper? Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. Is that I showed too much of how willing I am to put the other guy over, and I think that hurt me in the long run. So every time I went to a new federation, they had the mentality of, oh, he's a good jobber. When I'm coming in saying, well, I want story. You know, I don't need to be the main event. I don't need a strap, but I want a good story. And I would have to fight tooth and nail to get that point because they weren't looking at me that way.
And after the death of ECW, coming in and taking those big badass bumps all the time, like that carried a little bit of a reputation among some of the promoters too. That maybe that kind of didn't elevate you where you needed to be, even though you're doing great work. You kind of look like maybe you were doing old ECW stuff, and a lot of guys frowned on that for like about 10 years after ECW died. And if you're putting together highlight tapes back then trying to get them out, that probably didn't work in your favor either.
Right. Well, the big thing I got to ask, Tony, because we definitely got to get to our conversation of Hogan here very soon. I got a couple more I want to slap towards your career here.
All right.
These are going to be a little bit more pinpoint, but the first one I'm going to ask is, like, give me some of your favorite matches. Like, give me some of your favorite memories of matches. You've had an 18-year career. You've had a lot of matches. You've worked in a bunch of different places, but there's got to be a handful that just really stick out in your mind. As like, if you were putting together your own highlight video for, like, say, for the sake of argument, like WWE creates those videos for, like, Hogan or Bret Hart or whatever, and it's always a compilation of matches. What would be your compilation of matches?
Funny thing is, most of my big matches were with guys that I felt weren't that great, because it kind of showed that I knew what I was doing as far as leading a match. You know, I wrestled a guy named Nate Briggs in Amarillo, and he was literally the promoter's son.
Okay.
And of course, it was that same mentality we were just talking about. I gotta put the promoter's son over for the belt. But I made it to be like, we're gonna have fun with this. I was the heel champion going in. I did every stupid, cheap heel thing I could do. I got disqualified for kicking him in the dick. I got counted out. I think I went under the ring at one point and, like, put a thing of ketchup on my forehead and came out, oh my God, he's bleeding. And the general manager at the time came out and totally ad-libbed. She legitimately freaking put her finger into the ketchup, licked it, and was like, this is ketchup.
Nice. Nicely done.
I mean, this guy was not good. But we went. I think we legitimately went about 20, 25 minutes with it. And in the end, I put him over clean, and that crowd lost their ever-loving mind.
Okay. All right. Well, that's one. Give me two more.
I got another one. Same concept. It was actually wrestling Brokeback Billy, who you'll remember.
Yeah.
I hope he might remember. But as you know, Billy was a gimmick. He was never a wrestler. Like, it just, it was what it was.
Right.
And he would tell you that. But he did. He told me that. He was like, he was just randomly going off about, and he was retiring. And they wanted to give him a good farewell, so they put him in there with me. And I told him, because I was, Mr. Big Bad Heel, blah, blah, blah. Just, mean, gonna punch you in the face. And we had, like, beaten up his manager, and we had beaten up his friends, and it was just him. And we were going to, it was for the New Era title this time. They're all championship matches, I guess, because I'm selfish, I don't know, but yeah. But so we get in there, we're working on stuff, and he's like, I can't do that. I was like, I know, that's why we're here. Like, I think one of the things, like, he'd never done like a power slam, never once, and like I think he'd wrestled for 10 years.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was a gimmick. He was a gimmick. He had the gimmick, so they put him in shows, which is probably one of my biggest pet peeves from anybody who's ever had the audacity to call themselves a trainer. Is as soon as you find a gimmick, you put a guy in a show. It's garbage. That's huge reason that wrestling's, independent wrestling is laughed at times. But I digress.
Oh, now you're picking on the poop buster.
Yeah. Just saying, people do it all the time. If you can't hack it at this wrestling training center, you go to this wrestling training center, and you just keep downgrading until somebody's willing to put you on a show. It still happens.
Yep, it does. It definitely does. And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but some of them have made a career out of it, so much so that they've actually gotten to the next levels through their BS. And again,
they got the club because of their gimmick. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge difference between a guy like Orange Cassidy, who's he can wrestle. He can go out there and have a great match, but the gimmick's what's over. It is what it is. Whether you like it or you don't, it's what got him to the dance. Because being just Golly Joe wrestler isn't going to get him signed. It's just not.
And look,
there are a million great wrestlers.
And look, if you're not looking to get to the next level, to the E or Impact or AWE, there's nothing wrong with being more of a gimmick wrestler than an in-ring tactician. I mean, I don't mean to throw somebody under the bus here, but one of the first people that always come to my mind when I think of somebody who had mediocre in-ring ability, but the gimmick was phenomenal, was like, the Canadian Love Machine. That gimmick was loved. I mean,
definitely.
And that was enough.
Yeah.
It was never a gimmick that would ever get you to the E because there was no in-ring ability, but the gimmick was loved. And of course, Tony and I had a handle in naming his finishers.
Oh yeah, the handle. I got the reference.
The love handle and the fucking the one night stand.
The love handle, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So
Santino Marella was another one. He was a phenomenal wrestler, but the gimmicks what got over.
Right.
Yeah, the gimmick is what got him to the dance for sure.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one thing here, with those being your most memorable matches. In everybody's career, no matter how short or long it is, who is it that wrestled you the most snug? Who gave you the hardest bumps, the biggest haters? Who really laid into you? Was it when you were coming up, when you crossed over to another territory? Who gave you the hardest time?
I'm sorry in advance.
Nah, actually, it wasn't you. Freaking, Kincaid's always been a snug one. Probably actually, Dak Draper from Ring of Honor.
Draper, really?
I had a match with him. Freaking, no, he's a great dude. Freaking, love the guy. Freaking, we had a singles match one time, and I don't know why, because he's legitimately a foot taller than me. But we did the whole thing where we did the double down, we get up, hit each other, blah, blah, blah. I have never been slapped that hard in my life.
Okay.
Like I have never almost lost consciousness in one of those things before. And freaking,
He's got that reputation with a lot of people. He wrestles very snug, and he's very crisp, and he's
a
very
great
good.
guy. Freaking good, very good at what he does. I've seen him. I knew him back when he freaking, he was another guy. He had $1 million look, and they just put him in matches.
Right.
And freaking, to his credit, he got better, got substantially better. He's
was
great.
he calling the match, or were you?
Oh no, hell no. He was he was smart enough to listen. Like he can't. The thing about him is he was one of those guys that it's not as prevalent as it was, but he was an amateur wrestler, and he got seen at I think Gerald Briscoe, if I remember correctly, saw him in an amateur match, and was like, "Here's your contract, go get trained." So he went to Colorado and he found the first guy that would train him, and he was one of those guys. The first guy that trained him was, "Well, I'll take your money, no big deal, blah blah blah." Teach you just enough to get you on shows. And I mean, WWE is going to freaking teach him how to properly do things when it gets down to developmental anyway. So what's the big deal on, thought process, I guess. But I mean, he knew what he was doing. He was smart enough to listen. And look where he's at now.
All right, well, the big thing, the final question I have, I've got two things left to bring towards you. One, the final question is, what is in the future for the homicidal half-breed? Like, what do you have looking forward from this day for the character? How much farther are you looking to go?
Right now, like I said, we're doing the tag team thing right now. Me and Cumberbatch with Vanity Incorporated. We're looking to go as far as we can with it. We like to do more out-of-state stuff. Like to do some stuff with Impact comes to Vegas every couple of months. If we could get on there a little bit, that'd be phenomenal. We actually worked the Chris Brothers OVE last year, and that was a good little match.
All right.
So that would be cool. AEW just recently came to town. They're looking for a little extra help. We definitely love to do that.
And then, of course, if anybody's listening that may be a promoter or whatever, or even a fan that wants to get a hold of you, where could they find you? Like, what are the best ways to get in contact with Mr. Tony Moralas?
So you can do on my definitely on freaking Twitter at Moralas Mafia, and you can always find me on freaking Facebook just under Tony Moralas.
All right, cool. The reason I was bringing that up is so that way we can move into the next section of the show, which hopefully you'll be joining us for, especially because I'm not going to lie, I've got to pee. So after I introduce this, I'm going to step away and let you guys talk for a minute.
Cool.
But Mr. Michaels is going to introduce what we are going to be discussing next. And like I said, you are more than welcome to stay in and have this conversation. I'm sure you've got plenty to say on the man because basically he is the brother to your favorite wrestler of all time. So, or should I say brother?
Ah, you had to go there, huh?
I went there. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about next here is Hulk Hogan during, whether it's the AWA days, the WWF days, the WCW days, back to WWE, how good or not good was he for wrestling, considering all of the backstage politics, the way he came up in the business? And I've got a few different takes on this, just knowing from the very beginning of how his career started.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him wrestle twice as Terry Bollea before he took on the Hogan gimmick. And so whenever he was wrestling in the old AWA out of Minneapolis, he was still Terry Bollea. And you got to consider behind the scenes at this point in time is Mean Gene Okerlund, Larry Zbyszko, and Eric Bischoff and Bobby the Brain Heenan. These are the four main agents at the time that are going on at that time. Whenever Hogan left AWA in '82, Eric Bischoff was an executive producer at that point in time. So I didn't realize that. Yeah. So all four of them were very integral in like turning the volume up on Terry Bollea. Because before then, he was in rock bands. He played the bass guitar, this big menacing bodybuilder guy. And they're like, man, if we just really found a way to fucking turn up your personality, we've got something. And then he's like, well, let me tell you something, brother. And Bobby the Brain Heenan said, stop, fucking say that again. And that's where the let me tell you something, brother fucking shit comes from. Is from Bobby the Brain Heenan working off of Gene Okerlund during those old AWA interviews. You can still find them on YouTube and whatnot. So whenever that starts happening and Vince sees where Hogan is actually about to become, he steals him from AWA, which at that time, the AWA was about ready to go bankrupt. So, hi.
Hey, buddy.
Recording you.
I'm sorry, man. Give me just a second.
Oh, that's cool.
Trying to stay with mom, buddy.
So
Sorry,
Vince,
I had to grab my charger.
go ahead, bro. So Vince steals Hulk Hogan from the AWA because at this time Verne Gagne is going bankrupt. So he takes the chance to steal his biggest star. And he brings him in, puts him over on the Iron Sheik whenever Bob Backlund's on the fucking shelf, and then Hulkamania is born. Now, he has been developed a great deal. His character's really been put over to a large extent for about 4 or 5 years. He never really got tested in the AWA, and at the beginning, whenever he came into WWE, or WWF at the time, he got the match with the Iron Sheik, took the strap in 12 seconds, and boom, we're off and running. Well, in the meantime, he's had enough time to develop some real good hooks in some people. He's got Zbyszko in his ear. He's got Okerlund. He's got Bobby the Brain Heenan. Later on comes Eric Bischoff. But by the time the end of the WWF run has happened, he has so much about politics and so much about booking that he is an impossible monster to control. That's what I think of the original WWF run. I'll let you guys take it from there. The WCW, I think we see a totally different side of Hogan. Everybody thinks he's a monster, and it wasn't him. It was Kevin. But I think during the original WWF days, there was a lot of like innocent charm that actually happened that allowed the Hulkamania thing to run wild the way that it did. Vince really capitalized on a really good idea, put him up against Sergeant Slaughter turning heel, the Iron Sheik, all of that shit, and they really captured on a really good thing. And then he became a power broker, and that's when he changed a little bit. And that goes into like 91, 92, going to WCW. What do you think, Chris?
Well, now that I come back, I missed half of what you said because, like I said, I had to take a leak. I silenced my mic and took off the headset.
Oh, okay. Well, let Tony take it then.
All right, yeah, let Tony go first so that way I can catch up what's being said. Because, I mean, my view of Hogan is really simple, is that I give credit where credit is due. Pro wrestling would not be in the mainstream as it is if it wasn't for his gimmick. But I think he's one of those people that we were talking about earlier that Tony was talking about, where the gimmick preceded the in-ring ability. And I don't think he's really contributed that much in the way of technicality to the sport. And I think the sport would have still existed and maybe even reached the heights that it reached without him. However, I've got to give the devil his due on that aspect. But we'll dig deeper.
I will say before Tony answers on my part there is, do you know who actually broke him in?
I don't.
Hiro Matsuda.
Yes, Hiro Matsuda, who broke his fucking leg during training to see if he would come back. And Hogan came back 8 weeks later, takes off the air cast, gets back in the fucking ring, and says, "We ain't finished." He had all the fucking heart you could fucking ever have. He was going to be a worker no matter what. So I give him that.
All right, Tony.
All right. Really, I think Hogan was the right place at the right time, and I definitely think like you need a star, and Hogan was that in spades. Whereas we definitely talked about, like I said, about how work rate over gimmick sometimes. Hogan was definitely that. I can't say I've always heard stuff about his Japan work where he was apparently incredible, or at least substantially different than the Hulk Hogan that we saw in WWE.
What was he?
They've been doing that for decades, though.
What the hell was he in Japan? He was Wild Pegasus or something? I think it was.
No, Wild Pegasus was Chris Benoit.
That was Chris Benoit. He came over there as Hogan, but because the crowd dictates that you wrestle a different style, you saw a different style of Hogan. He wrestled as Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
Yeah. You just saw a totally different worker because Japan dictates that. You cannot be the gimmick guy in Japan and get over.
Yeah. But no, I definitely think that you need you need a star. That's why WWE as a whole, the ratings are down and everything. They don't have that guy right now. As much as they want, they want Roman Reigns to be that guy. The crowd is dictating that he's not, and they have not either. They don't want to find somebody else to be that guy, or they just haven't found him yet. Hogan was that guy. In Attitude Era, they had two guys, with Stone Cold and The Rock, and then Triple H was able to maintain that afterwards. And that was kind of the big thing about it, is you need a star, and at that time, Hogan was that guy, saying he was the Ric Flair of the NWA, just in a totally he was the main guy. Only Ric Flair was the workhorse guy, and Hogan was the cinema guy.
But I think
yeah, and Ric Flair would wrestle on Broadway, and you never would see Hogan do that. That's the difference between the two. But Hogan was like bigger than life whenever he first hit the scene.
Oh yeah, and that was the thing. Hogan was that superstar that was able to rub shoulders with Hollywood elite and hang out with Cyndi Lauper and tag team with Mr. T and do all that stuff. And that was what Hogan was. He was almost like Goldberg-esque at that time. Goldberg was never a great worker, but Goldberg had that aura around him that, oh my God, this guy's gonna, he's the star.
Whenever he hung the gimmick on Goldberg, he actually kind of harkened back to the early days of Hulkamania. He's like, we're going to make another Hogan. That's what he did with Goldberg. That was the whole intention when they brought him in and put him on the streak.
Although at the same time, they kind of were shooting on Steve Austin. If you ever listen to Steve's description of his leaving of WCW, he wanted to go into that gimmick, the basically what's classically known as the Stone Cold gimmick, the bald head, the black trunks, the attitude, and Bischoff passed, said no, it'll never work. But then he put Goldberg with a shaved head, black trunks, attitude, and
True, but by that point he'd actually already seen it work with Stone Cold, though, because
Stone
Cold might not have been the main event monster that he was, but he was definitely on the up by that point.
But I mean that it does, to harken back to Hogan here, that does come into the question of why I wanted to have this conversation. Is that there's no denying that Hogan had the appeal. He had the fans wanting him there, and he was definitely the guy as far as being the poster child for professional wrestling. But is it fair and proper that he was the catalyst to catapult professional wrestling into the mainstream that it has been since him and continues to be today? Is it fair that it was him when there were so many others who were, if not as popular, definitely way more talented? People like Dusty Rhodes, people like Ric Flair, people like, hell, even within the WWE. I mean, you could make arguments all day long that, people like the Texas Tornado or Macho Man Randy Savage might have been more deserving of that spot.
That's true, but in business, does that matter?
Right.
I mean, at the bottom line, it's who's going to make you the most money, and they happen to pick Hogan.
I think
if I remember correctly, Superfly Jimmy Snuka was huge at that time. Like, he'd had the match with because most of those guys you'd said weren't in WWE at that time. Like guys like Snuka, though. I don't know if it's the same time or not, but maybe right after. But Big Boss Man was stupid over. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, stupid over.
Yep.
Like, those baby faces were amazing. Ray Traylor, Boss Man, I don't think ever gets the respect he's due. Hacksaw wasn't. I love Hacksaw, but he was never a tactician, but he was a hell of a brawler. Superfly was another guy that had that amazing aura. But
he was in his own stratosphere when he was in his prime. Yeah. He was one of a kind. But whenever Hogan does the leap to WCW and we leave Hulkamania behind, and then you've got the NWO coming in, now you're dealing with a whole bunch of power brokers that go back to the old AWA days. You got Larry Zbyszko, Bischoff, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gene Okerlund, and then here comes Kevin and Scott Hall, who a lot of people forget was the AWA World Champion when they went bankrupt. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of old AWA guys that all get together.
AWA champion?
Yes, he was. For 4 years, he was
I did not
the
remember
AWA
that.
champion. Yeah,
Nice.
and he had a totally different look. That's why nobody remembers.
I
Anyways,
remember Scott Hall being there and being World Tag Team Champions with Henning, but I didn't remember that he was the
yeah,
singles
whenever
champion
Henning
as well.
left, he took the strap before, right after Martel. He had the
Oh,
strap
okay.
after Martel. So the last 3 years, when the AWA was basically nothing, like basically almost an independent, basically after NWA and WWF. But anyways, so you've got all these old AWA guys who come together, and they steal the idea from New Japan Wrestling to do the New World Order. That's an old NJPW gimmick.
Mhm.
They steal that idea, and you got Kevin and Scott Hall who are calling the shots because they have these guaranteed contracts, these guaranteed no work contracts that nobody else had. They're like, we're just going to do these fucking gimmicks all day long and get over. That's whenever the power actually, like Hulk Hogan wasn't the power broker then. It was Kevin and Scott Hall.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the time in WCW had a bad reputation during the Monday Night Wars, which, I mean, it worked in their favors because they were winning the Monday Night Wars. But like you were saying that the power brokers were old and AWA guys, the top roster of WCW was old WWF guys. Like their talent pool was the mid-carders and the show openers, but they put everything on Hogan, on Macho Man, on, outside of people like Luger and Sting, everybody was old WWF stars being the main eventers, the ones that had the major stories.
Besides Sting, who never got his due during all of that, and Lex Luger, who was incredibly overrated, and and Flair, of course, being the old original NWA guys, like it was a whole roster of WWF guys. You're right, and the combination of some of the AWA guys. So you had 3 NWA guys stuck in the middle, with the bookers and the agents being old AWA and WWF guys. Like fucking no wonder Lex left and came back the way he did, and no wonder Sting fucking disappeared for a while. Like it was just a shit show for them.
Yeah.
I think of the last part of the years probably with as far as making stars, they made like 3 guys in the last 5 years of WCW: Goldberg, Booker T, and DDP.
Do you guys remember Booker T as G.I. Bro?
Yes, I remember G.I. Bro.
Yeah. I remember Colin Kane in the original Harlem Heat.
Who's that?
I remember Colin Kane.
Colin Kane.
Yeah, the original Harlem Heat. That's what their names were.
The name that's
back when they were with
forgotten.
with Robert Parker, if I remember correctly. Good old Colonel.
Yep, Robert Parker. He used to be called Colonel Robert Parker in his Memphis days. And them putting Booker over the way that they did as the de facto brother group with his dude there,
Stevie Ray.
That was and both of them were great fucking workers in the ring. They were both actual tacticians, even though they were high flower power guys or high flying power guys. They were both able to really put on some fucking moves. And you're right, like as far as a true created superstar, because Goldberg's a gimmick.
Yeah.
That ended up being a good hand in the ring much, much fucking later. He was never a good hand during the streak. It wasn't until he lost that he started actually working good matches. But Booker is like their truest creation of the last, you're right, the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he had been around for 10 years before that. He goes all the way back to Texas wrestling.
Yeah, he was
after
at
he got out of
GFW or GWF.
Well, yeah.
Wrestling.
After he got out of the joint in Houston, was in WCCW with Kerry Von Erich and Stone Cold back in those days. He was G.I. Bro, and he was actually an up-and-comer back then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, that goes back to what I was saying. Like during the days of the Monday Night War, I mean, if you ever want proof that WCW was drowning their own talent, people they could have built their companies on, look at the people who went over to the E and made major careers out of themselves. I know it's taboo to mention the name, but Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Juventud Guerrera, all of them were stars in other countries. In WCW, they were mid-card at best. Nobody cared. Chris Jericho, you bring them over to the WWE and you unleash them and you see the potential and the talent and the draw ability that they had, which again goes back to what we were talking about with Hogan. Hogan would be the right or not the right guy. 'Cause it almost seems like in that aspect, like using WCW as an example, people like Hulk Hogan were stifling the next generation talent.
Oh, they definitely were, but I think if you're gonna if you want to actually talk about Hogan in particular stifling guys, you would look at TNA. Like TNA,
that's when he was
slaughtered that joint.
Yeah.
Like that was if you want to, because I can see the point that Chris is making with Hall, Nash, and Hogan together, and Hall and Nash being the particular guys. Because I mean, Kevin Nash is the guy that ended the streak, and he did it in the stupidest way possible. But like, if you're gonna look at Hogan as him and him himself, and then obviously Eric Bischoff, freaking going out of their way to kill off a Fed and bring their buddies in and get their buddies a payday. TNA's that freaking TNA's. I mean,
if you want to look at like how legitimately the power structure was set up, Kevin was carrying the book at the time that they did the finger tap that killed WCW.
Mm-hmm.
He booked that, and Hogan went with it. Whenever he did the finger tap and Hogan lay down and blah blah blah, we got the belt. That was a Kevin move. So that kind of tells you a little bit, even though Hogan was definitely keeping the younger talent down, which in anybody's circumstance, look at NFL quarterbacks. Did Brett Favre want Aaron Rodgers to fucking come in? Fuck no, he didn't. Same thing with these guys, But was it good for the business? It definitely wasn't. But I think during the fall of WCW and then him coming back to the E, it was a totally different animal. Like, he didn't get to have that stroke other than on TNA. He didn't really get to exercise as much power as everybody like points the finger at him. I don't think. I really don't.
But the thing is somebody with a gimmick like Hulk Hogan, I mean, just because he doesn't have the book or the ear of the promoter, the gimmick itself kind of demands the power anyway. Because, like you said, you put Hulk Hogan in front of a crowd, people are going to respond. He's going to draw. He's going to sell tickets. He's going to put butts in seats. He's going to sell merchandise. That's money to the company.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's always a pop whenever he comes on. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So even if he's just a guy who comes to the locker room with his gear, puts it on, comes out to the ring, does his business, and leaves, he's still got influence and power just because he's Hulk fucking Hogan.
So you're definitely right.
Here's an interesting question, or to get everybody's honest opinion on. What do you think about the Hulk Hogan sex tape?
I think I don't ever want to see that shit again. I don't think there's enough bleach in the world to ever clean my eyes out. Beyond that,
I think deserves a Razzie.
Do you think it's a work for her? That's my question.
I think I don't care.
Oh, I could. Yeah, I don't care. I could totally see it. I'm not gonna say I'm a skeptic, but I always think a lot of that stuff could be like, maybe.
You know what?
Maybe there's aliens. Maybe there's.
I think
maybe
it's a
there's
total work, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously he's bagging her or whatever, but she's definitely with him because that's Hulk Hogan and Hulk Hogan money. And he's like, well, let's just put a big pop on your social media thing because she's a bikini model and she's on Instagram. And so now all of a sudden her account has like 800,000 followers and she's getting paid.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, everybody's got a fucking sex tape nowadays. It's not like back in the day where it was so, oh my God, somebody's little home video got released, like fucking,
Paris Hilton.
No, Paris Hilton.
Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson.
Yeah, Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. That was
that was a thing.
That was the first one of like, oh my God, that got leaked. But everybody's got a sex tape. Shit, you can go on Pornhub and find shit with half the fucking roster of the WWE, both men and women. Fucking. That's why with Hogan, the only reason it's a big deal is because it's Hogan.
Is it
again,
a bad attempt of an old man to make himself relevant again?
Probably.
Yeah. I could see it.
Probably. Hogan doesn't do anything that doesn't benefit Hogan.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with WWE. Freaking like on their, WWE doesn't let you know anything that they don't want you to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like this guy wants his release. Oh, this guy's unhappy with the company. They want you to know that.
Yeah,
they want you to feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And they wouldn't be out there otherwise. It's like the whole Ronda Rousey thing right now. Ronda Rousey said, F the fans, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. WWE wouldn't talk about it if they didn't want you to know about it. They wouldn't have Nia Jax responding to it if they didn't want you to know about it.
Which one of the 138 stars backstage hasn't ever said, fuck the fucking fans?
Yeah.
Give it a break.
Not wrong. I mean, hell, even in the independent circuits, you have your off days.
Yeah,
No.
definitely. I mean, you can catch anybody in an interview at the wrong moment, and they're going to be like, "Fuck that guy. He's a piece of shit." You know.
But
That's really all Ronda did.
Yeah.
I think
it is what it is.
I think if Hogan really wanted to still be relevant and helpful to this business, I think Hogan would need to step away from the mainstream and back down into the independent circuits to help develop and bring attention to the new up-and-coming talents. That's the truth.
Do you think if he were to play the role of the mentor and drop the immortal act, come out just without the bandana, without the glasses, play humble, and put somebody else over?
No, he would never do that. He would never do that.
You don't think he's capable, or he ever would?
Neither.
I don't think it would help anything. Obviously, I don't think it would help anything.
However,
I think Hogan is what he is.
Yeah. However, you get him to what's the federation you're at now, Tony? New Era.
New Era Wrestling.
Yeah, you get him booked on a New Era show. Have him go up against the homicidal half breed Tony Moralas. Even if Tony's doing the job, Tony's working fucking Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan's appearing in Colorado at an indie show. That is butts in the seats, and that is attention to Tony's career.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous butts in the seats. It's like how Ultimate Warrior wrestled Orlando Jordan in Spain one time, and people still, for better or worse, talk about it.
In the last 5 years, it may not be as relevant, but someone who is like currently doing that, being the old legend, who's putting butts in the seats and in some cases putting people over, and in other cases, he's going over while, making the huge draw and bringing some attention to an independent organization. Why doesn't anybody give any love to Jerry Lawler for that? He's been doing it for 20 years.
I always give love to
He has been
Lawler.
doing it for 20 years. That's valid. My brother-in-law actually worked him a couple years ago in old school wrestling down in Texas.
I wrestled. I did one card with his son.
Okay.
And back in the day, whenever I was coming up, I was real good friends with Eric Acker, whose family owned the Evansville Coliseum. And from the age of 8 years old till all the way through high school, I got to be backstage with the boys all the time, and that's how I did. It's not like I fucking know Jerry or anything fucking crazy, but I mean, he recognized my face back then. He knew who the fuck I was.
Nice.
But the fact that Jerry always puts everybody over. Listen to any interview he does. He does something that Hulk Hogan's never been capable of. He's always putting everyone over, no matter what, even if it's someone he viciously hated. Like him and Austin Idol never got along. They never worked well together. They always, every match they had fucking broke out. But if you hear him in an interview now, he puts Austin over like he's the Rock. And Jerry just doesn't get a whole lot of credit for that, other than like guys in the business. But from fans, I mean, you don't hear about it a whole lot.
That's because nobody cared for the over-the-shoulder fucking, Andre the Giant tights with the King gimmick. But as far as fan base is concerned,
I popped for it, so I popped for it.
Right, but I'm talking from the fan standpoint. From a worker standpoint, of course, everybody knows what Lawler does for this business. Anybody who gives respect to Jerry Lawler ain't been fucking paying attention as far as inside the business is concerned.
Exactly. He just doesn't get the press. I guess that's my question. Like, why doesn't he get the press for that? Because
point in there real quick, if I could just slide in. Another Jerry that does not get the credit he's due. Jerry Lynn.
Jerry Lynn.
Oh, yeah, Jerry Lynn,
dude. I've worked him maybe a half dozen times over the years. And that guy is incredible. Just totally. I think he's working with AEW now as a producer, I believe. But he's just just a great guy, always willing to help out anybody, and like he would just go out there. I don't think I ever actually beat him, but he always willing to do business with anybody and everybody, and freaking just overall. I mean, he come out there as like the Ring of Honor champion and put you over if he felt it made sense.
From all the stuff that I hear, it seems like, because Dutch used to be the same way as well. He'd pull you to the side, hey kid, let me tell you what you're doing here, or why we do this, or why you don't need to do that, or why that's an extra move you don't need to show until like your main event or whatever. Is he that? Whenever you worked with him, was he that guy that the hey kid?
Yeah, he was totally like he was always nice about it, but he was always brutal. He would tell you what it was. This is great. This could be worked on. Don't do this. Do that. Always take time out to help you out if you were willing to ask.
Dutch never got the recognition for that because he was not only a great booker but also a great agent, and he wrote some incredible storylines, or booked them at least. Michael P.S. Hayes is another one, but he gets all kinds of fucking press. But Dutch is kind of in the same light as Michael P.S. Hayes the past 30 years in the WWE. He's developed a lot of fucking talent and booked a lot of shit.
Nice. I didn't know that personally, so that's very interesting to know.
Yeah, Dutch is. I mean, he's one of the old mainstays from the old territory days that were, along with PFAs that people still listen to, or did. Yeah. I'm sorry, but.
Well, again, we're going right back into it, bringing us back around to Hogan. We're all mentioning, older wrestlers with the exception of Jerry Lynn. I mean, he is older as in like last generation, but I wouldn't necessarily put him in the same class as like Hogan or.
Oh no,
no, definitely not.
He's the in between generation of it, but
right.
not that guy.
Right, but again, we're seeing a major difference in mentality of people who not only have the gimmick or the in-ring ability, because anytime anybody mentions like Jerry Lynn, for example, the first thing that pops in my head is Jerry Lynn RVD. Any of them, any of the matches of Jerry Lynn RVD are fucking just they're fucking shows.
Classic.
Yeah. You don't need to put anything else on the card. Just have that match, and that's worth price of admission. The guy can work, but they have the humble mentality and wanting to further the business, not just their career. And then you have somebody like Hulk Hogan.
Well, yeah, he's a headline grabber and a big ego, and there's a huge difference between the first group of guys and him. He was brought in. He had a lot of air blown up his ass at the beginning. He got put into that position, and he believed his own press, and he's never stopped. Whereas the other guys, they came up the hard way, and Hogan got pushed into the spotlight as soon as he found the persona, which was brought on by Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund. Once he found that, hey brother, then it was off to the races, and it never fucking stopped. Whereas RVD, he came up the hard way. He had several different names and several different gimmicks before he was RVD.
Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I'm just meaning like I don't mean longevity or even what's the word I'm looking for here? Caliber or status within the business of Hulk Hogan, but just the mentality difference.
Yeah, totally different mentality. You're right. You're totally right. Yeah. I think Hogan, whenever he got brought in with Vince McMahon, he was definitely given the bag and given the ride, and he was told, make it work. And he never veered away from it. He never appreciated the shot he was given and never turned around and gave it to anybody else. So I guess the long and short of it is he's earned the favor.
I mean, the last run of the WWE, when he came back and he was still kind of mixing the immortal Hulk Hogan with Hollywood Hogan. Thinking of that run in the
match with the Rock?
In the early 2000s, like when he was feuding people like The Rock, and he was feuding people like Shawn Michaels, and he was actually putting them over. That almost felt like a different Hogan.
That was a different Hogan. You're correct. Yeah, he was playing a different part. It wasn't a different Hogan, but he was playing a different Hogan, if that makes sense.
Right.
He was definitely the aged veteran at that time.
Yeah. If he wanted to have his time in the spotlight, he had to put people over. If he wanted to have that WrestleMania center stage moment, it was to take an L. He had to put someone over, just like Ric Flair did with Shawn Michaels.
Right. Well, but with Michaels and Flair, then it could be a work, and I may be wrong, but wasn't Michaels Flair's choice for his retirement?
Oh yeah, Flair chose him. He actually chose him 2 years in advance of that match.
Yeah, I thought I read that. I wasn't sure.
He told him a long time before then. He said there's nobody else who could carry Ric Flair's jockstrap in his prime than Shawn Michaels, so he has to be the closer.
Ah! Somebody's practicing their wrestling moves.
Something, yeah. Craziness.
That's a question I never got to you. Obviously, when I knew you in my career and in our careers, respective careers and all, you were a single guy who was all about the wrestling industry, the business. You know, the only thing that stopped you from shows or whatever is if you worked a double shift at your job. You know, because 9 to 5s take precedent. Now you're married with kids, man. How's that working out with you on your career? Is like you still find the same devotion or dedication, or has it changed your your perspective?
It's definitely changed things. It's definitely changed things. Like my family's the most important thing to me, hands down. Me and my wife are married about a year and a half, maybe a little bit more. We got a 5-year-old son together. So I mean, like we did. We took him to his first wrestling show about last month, before everything shut down. Like the second to last AEW show they did with a crowd.
Oh, that's cool.
I was kind of mulling
Was that
over
in
the
Denver?
idea. Yeah, I was up in Denver.
Okay.
So like I mulled over the idea of going and doing
I like
extra
what
work and
Tony and
whatnot.
them are doing right now. I think they're. I mean, they're show business it up, but I think that they're trying to approach it as legitimate a way as they possibly can. I like what they're doing.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. That's my son's favorite. He'll watch WWE and he'll watch TNA and whatnot and Impact, but like he won't miss an AEW show.
They're not just tipping the hat to the old school; they're actually diving in, which is cool. Very.
Oh
cool.
yeah, they got a good mix of the modern stuff and the older stuff with like guys like Cody and bringing in Cody, Sean Spears, bringing in guys like Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Jake Roberts. It's a good mix of everything. Which is my personal flavor of ice cream as far as wrestling goes. I'm a big, 3-ring circus guy myself. If you don't like the acrobats, you're gonna like the clowns. If you don't like the clowns, you're gonna like the lion tamer, whatever. Something for everybody.
I personally can't wait for next year to come around and see Scott Hall's son come in and because they're going to give him a push. I kind of can't wait to see that.
That could be interesting. That could definitely be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's actually going to be good because the kid is a fucking specimen, and he's bigger than Scott was, which is crazy.
Yeah, I've seen him, and I've seen some of his New Japan stuff. I haven't seen anything of him in I think he's in All Japan right now.
Yeah, he's an AGPW. Yeah.
As long as it doesn't bury his career. I mean, look at fucking Henning's kid.
I think that was because...
I think he's a victim of circumstance, I think.
Yeah, I think that was a victim of type of deal, yeah.
Scott
has ingratiated himself back with Vince and everything, and I think it's going to work out fine. And his time in Japan right now, definitely getting his shots. I can't wait to see him get a push stateside. He's going to be a fucking hell of a dude, man, I think.
See what happens with him. I mean, when I saw him, he was like super green, so let's see what happens with him when he's given an opportunity to actually do something.
As long as they don't do to him what they do to most of their mainstay guys, they take talented roster and turn him into the 3-move Joes.
Yeah.
He's definitely past that already with his Japan work. I mean, he's chain wrestling right now. I mean, he's actually working good matches.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right, but of course, one of the first people I point to when I mention the 3-move Joes, I think of people like John Cena, who are, if you find older matches of Cena before his WWE
he was
push,
a cruiserweight.
he was a cruiserweight, he was a tactician, he was a mat wrestler, he was a high flyer. And then all of a sudden, he became the John Cena we all know.
Well, like I said the other day on the other show, that's what 10 years of high-quality Mexican supplements will do for you.
Yeah. I think it's the whole thing with all their top guys, really. I mean, like, freaking Stone Cold Steve Austin, he wasn't much of a technician. You look at Stunning Steve Austin in WCW in the early 90s, this guy was freaking amazing.
Yeah, he could work any fucking match with anybody on any level, actually.
Yeah.
The Hollywood
Rock in Memphis when he was Flex Cabana was better. Freaking, there were few and far between guys that are amazing. That, like, when you look at them as main event guys that don't kind of dumb down their technique. A lot of guys, WWE's been doing that forever. Hogan was another one.
Yeah, well, what they did at Backlund whenever he made the comeback, He went from the 1 hour Broadway every fucking night guy like Ric Flair used to be to doing the, the 3-move Joe kind of deal, where we got to get him to the chicken wing. We're going to do a couple fucking bounces off the ropes and a couple bumps, and then I'm going to chicken wing you and act like a torture. They turned him into a gimmick. Whenever before that, from the late 70s, he was like the all-American fucking boy. Like Bruno Sammartino hated the fact that Vince Sr. put the belt on him, and then after he saw him carry the strap for the first year, he was like, all right, I'm not making a comeback. This kid's got it. Whereas before, they talked Bruno into coming out of retirement 3 other fucking times. Like he'd been wrestling for 40 years. Whenever he gave the belt to Pedro and Ivan Koloff and finally to Bob Backlund, not coming back to get it from Backlund was like a big thing. Like that really told Backlund he was over because Bruno wasn't coming back to fucking rescue the company. And then they turned him into a fucking big gimmick.
Wow. Told you he's an encyclopedia. Now, understand, Chris, what you're doing now is what Tony used to do to me at shows.
Yeah, I was way smarter back then. I had a lot more stuff in my back pocket back then.
That's what happens when you take one too many chair shots. I told you that. I warned you about that shit.
It's all college knowledge now. I'm freaking back in college, so I do all that nonsense.
What are you going to college for?
Right now, trying to get my Associate of Sciences so I can get into a program to do radiology.
Oh, good for you, bro. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's the goal right now. So
whenever the word social first came out of your mouth, I thought you were going to say social services and be a social worker. I was like, oh my fucking God, please don't do that.
I don't hate
There's no money in
much.
He's not that much of a people person.
No, never was. Oh. Well, unless they're paying to see me in my underwear, I'm not really big on people.
Now see, I know Tony was worried about going on this show, especially with me, because I'm sure he was worried about I was going to bring up some of the embarrassing stories, and I'm not going to do that to him. He's our honored guest.
Too much time. He's done too much time between the ropes to embarrass him with silly shit. That's for sure.
Yeah.
18 years.
I've done plenty of silly shit in the middle of the ring. Don't feel bad.
Yes, but our crowning achievement was working the whole entire locker room into thinking we hated each other because of that one fucking girl.
Oh, you guys worked off a ring rat?
Oh my God! She was a ring rat, but she was training to come into the business. And
she wanted the valet.
Well, she was sniffing after Tony. She was sniffing after me.
Okay, yeah.
And everybody else.
And everybody else. The action.
And everybody else. And Tony and I got it into our heads. We're like, let's work this. So we started.
That's a job, man. That's actually a good deal.
So we started acting like we hated each other. Like we wouldn't talk to each other. We would talk to her, and she'd be feeding shit to her about me and feeding shit to me about him, and like, oh, I'm going to fuck him up, and we hang up the phone and call each other like, dude, do you believe what she said? Like we're working
it. This?
Yeah. And so we were
that's awesome.
We were working it for like what, a good 2-3 months. We had the owner of RMCW involved with it, and we had Queen Maeve in it. They were the only ones who knew what we were doing. So finally we decided, one day Tony and I decided we were going to let this come to a head at training. So he comes in, he's like, I'm going to fuck you up. I say, come on, bring it. He jumps into the ring, and we're shoot fighting. We're beating the shit out of each other. And this poor girl's in the corner, like, watching this breakdown, realizing she caused all this. We have other workers in RMCW sitting there like, fuck it, let them go. Maeve and
that's true, yeah.
And
I remember
her head at the same
Pitbull
time.
and Acid were there.
Yeah. Pitbull and Acid
Ride.
And all that, Wild Ride, they were all like, fuck it, let them go. Finally, the promoter and Maeve separate us, and the promoter fires us. Both of us are being kicked out of the ring and shit. And as Tony and I are walking out, we turn around, by the way, we got you. Like, we let the cat out of the bag. That poor girl never came back.
Oh, so you scrambled
Yeah.
her brain at the same time. Good deal. Because a lot of those ring rats deserve that shit, man. They're always looking for an end to get in some guy's pocket, or maybe that's their door into the business. And they're useful in their ways, but they always have an angle that they're playing. And to work one over and work the boys at the same time, man, that's a good job. That's a good job.
That was one of our crowning
Definitely
achievements.
a fun time. That and the deviled ham. That and the deviled ham.
That and the devil's hand. Those go into the highlight reel.
In closing to the Hulk Hogan discussion, one question for both of you. Both of you have millions more miles in the biz than I do. But my biggest disappointment of the entire Hulk Hogan era was the superpowers with Macho Man and the way they broke down Elizabeth. Because I don't think there's ever been a finer chick and a finer worker as far as being a lady in the business than Miss Elizabeth. And I thought that was just a horrible pan to the marks. And I thought it was a horrible waste of time for Vince to stretch that out over 2 WrestleManias. What's your all's opinion on it?
Well, it's kind of funny because I recently watched the Chris Benoit story on YouTube from Vice, Between the Ropes or whatever, and one of the things that like Chris
or whatever.
Yeah, and Chris Jericho was actually talking about Woman in that interview and how she was like the last of the valets, and
the real valet, yes.
the real valets who knew how to work a crowd and knew how to bring heat or whatever for the man she was representing, and how it was a lost art because every female nowadays they've got to they got to be Ronda Rousey, they've got to be a female worker and wrestler and a badass. They can't just be the elegant woman in the background or whatever. So it's very much a lost art. So of course I have that in my head right now, and thinking about the mega powers, which I haven't thought of in a very long time. You're right. It pretty much did kill Elizabeth as far as I don't want to use the term eye candy, but she was very much like the first lady of pro wrestling, and in every aspect of the word. And it kind of just cheapened her up to being another act.
It really killed the whole profile of how her and Savage, because I remember Savage as Randy Poffo and wrestling with Lanny and their dad. They wrestled in Southern Illinois. And whenever he first came in with Miss Elizabeth, she wasn't Miss Elizabeth at the time. She was just his girlfriend who came to the ring and made sure his pictures got taken and his T-shirts got sold. She was with him for a long fucking time. And she was like a high school sweetheart from Florida. And the way that she was then through to the superpowers, she really did not change whenever she was here in the Memphis area, whenever they first showed up in the WWF, and the old NWA stint that he had. Miss Elizabeth, the way that she worked that, along with maybe Missy Hyatt, are the only two, and Woman. She was badass, especially in her day with Kevin Sullivan. But those three are the last of the real valets, but the superpowers thing totally changed how everyone. She got booed for the first fucking time because of that. How the fuck are you going to make Miss Elizabeth get booed?
Well, see that's
was a horrible fucking thing.
That's what I mean. If I can use for an example of what I mean, if I were to use ECW characters, for example. I would say throughout her career, Elizabeth would be like Beulah McGillicuddy, just like the beautiful face of a company. After the Mega Powers fiasco, it really kind of turned her into Francine.
Yeah.
And
it was
which is no disrespect to those ladies, by the way, but just two completely different characters and the way they were presented.
I get what you're saying, and it also, because of the way that they made, which Savage, as Randy Poffo coming up through the Memphis and the old MCW days and all that other stuff that he did before he hit the mainstream, Like, he was a super paranoid motherfucker to begin with. And then to play on that like Vince did, like, he literally made that motherfucker lose his mind for a minute.
Right.
And that really wasn't cool either. When then you get the big roided out Randy Savage that you got in WCW, where he did the Spider-Man appearance and all that stuff. He was roided out of his fucking head during that. But he was a complete fucking mess after all of that. Like, that really fucked with him, and it fucked with her. And Hogan just kept on kind of cruising, and that's kind of the bad thing that you take from Hogan, where he never gave back. He should have put Savage over many times, especially in WCW. And he never returned the favor in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Tom? Or, excuse me, Tony. I don't know why I said Tom. Tony.
All good. But no, I don't know, because, from a fan perspective, if they hadn't broken them up, and they had, Elizabeth and Savage hadn't broken up, we wouldn't have got that comeback at WrestleMania 7, which I don't care what anybody says is
that was a great
legendary.
Match.
And way better. Yeah, it was a better match, and B, freaking him and Elizabeth, like him throwing Elizabeth up on his shoulders and them leaving together was like a real WrestleMania moment, not like what they just did with Otis and Mandy Rose kissing.
Right.
Which is cool, but it is, people are comparing it to Macho and Elizabeth getting back together, not even in the same universe.
Yeah,
that was a moment. Yeah. People openly wept in the crowd when that happened. So, as a fan, I have no issue with it, and I think it was great, because I think it actually led somewhere, which a lot of WWE stuff doesn't. But on the other hand, as far as, like you said, with the Macho's legitimate, mental stuff, that's horrible to do to somebody, but it's kind of on par with what WWE does to people.
Right.
There are many stories of people of them screwing with a talent just to screw with a talent. So
look what they did with Kurt Hennig and many other guys. They fuck them up.
Yeah.
Which is it is what it is. But that's one of the biggest tragedies of modern wrestling, I think, is the Miss Elizabeth, her dying, and later Savage. He was actually posthumously put in as Man of the Year at Harvard the year after he passed away. Did you guys know that?
I did not. I knew he had gotten it in '99. But I didn't know about the repeat. Yeah,
he's the only 2-time winner of Man of the Year from Harvard, and the second time was after he passed away. And you're talking about a list that includes presidents. He's the only 2-time guy.
Well earned then.
It speaks volumes.
Yeah, definitely.
But all right. Well, the big thing, Mr. Michaels, the big thing we got to talk about now. To end this show is what is going to be the topic of conversation next week. I think we should sit here and have a debate about it right now, and we could even have our guests come in on it. I have an idea I'll throw on the table for you. This could be
too. Go ahead.
This could be the debate topic of next week. Was Brock Lesnar the correct man for The Undertaker to end his WrestleMania streak with?
That is a good one. Mine is a little bit... mine's a little bit more historically inclined. I don't know. Well, ending the Undertaker streak, how much more historical can you be than that?
Right.
But my topic was NWA, WCW, or WWE. Which title run of Ric Flair's was most important to wrestling?
Ooh.
Damn, that's rough. I guess the tiebreaker would be our guest.
Both are interesting. Brock Lesnar definitely more current, obviously, but I'm more of a historical fan myself. I'm gonna say go with the title reigns for Ric Flair.
Flair it is. We could just put Lesnar on the back burner where he belongs anyway. For a future show.
Did you guys see the Big Ten Wrestling Championships where his son won the heavyweight?
No.
Did you see that?
Did not.
Ah, man. Yeah. The kid's a beast. He's the real deal. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, he's a fucking badass, man, actually.
Nice. Well, guys, that's going to do it for the first episode of Blown Spots. I definitely want to thank our guest, Mr. Tony Moralas, for taking some time out of his busy day to come talk historics with us and have a little wrestling dispute for But wait a minute, did we ever come up with a final verdict for Hogan? Like too overrated for the business? Like would it have existed without him?
No, we never actually
never did.
kind of settled on that. I don't think.
I think we need a final verdict, and I'll start with Tony on that.
Huh. I don't. For the originally fantastic. NWO was still good for a while. After that, everything's with the lone notable exception of probably freaking The Rock Hogan match. I would say the last couple of years. I think it comes down to the whole concept of you can either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. I think currently Hogan's a villain.
Yeah.
That's fair enough, but what I'm meaning is like the current state of professional wrestling, the world that it's in today, the mainstream that it is today. Would WWE have won the Monday Night Wars? Would the Monday Night Wars even existed? Would ECW have risen and fallen? Would Steve Austin become the icon that he became? Would The Undertaker have a 30-match winning streak at WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan and his contributions?
No. I think you need Hogan. I think you needed a star, and Hogan was that star. So I think from day one, you needed a star. You needed Hogan.
My vote is WrestleMania 1 was what it was because of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant that created WrestleMania, which we're seeing the 36th iteration of it this past weekend, which sucked balls.
I didn't even watch it.
Yeah, that's exactly the right answer. I think that the wrestling today, even though it has moved well beyond Hulkamania, I think wrestling becoming mainstream would not have happened without the Hulkamania rock and wrestling connection and all of that stuff. It wouldn't have. There wasn't anybody else who could have carried that torch successfully. I don't think.
See, I'll be the devil's advocate here. I think things played out the way it played out because of Hulk Hogan and his contributions. The character definitely brought wrestling into the mainstream. That being said, though, I'm a firm believer that things that are meant to happen are going to happen regardless of who's in place. So if Hulk Hogan never existed, somebody else would have become that role. And things still would have played out the way they were meant to play out.
Okay.
I firmly believe that wrestling business could still exist in the powerhouse that it is without Hulk Hogan's contributions. That's not taken away from his contributions. That's just believing in the business beyond one man.
Well, that goes back to my argument I said the other day that I think the greatest American art is the art of kayfabe. Well beyond that of jazz or movie production or anything. I think the art of kayfabe is something that is lost on a lot of people. They don't understand what it is, but to an extent, you're probably right.
And I could be completely wrong. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Dum.
So again, guys, thank you very much for joining us for our first episode here. If you enjoyed what you heard, please hit that thumbs up button, like, share, comment, subscribe. Check out all the other great podcasts like Mr. Rudder's going to tell you about his, and I'll tell you about mine. But, of course, also you find everything on audio formats where every quality podcast can be heard. You can find it on YouTube. And, of course, make sure you're going, if you're in the Denver area, go check out my boy Tony Moralas so he can, throw things at you and call you dirty names because you're still a heel, right?
Yep. He threw chairs and everything.
There you go. Throwing chairs, kitchen sink, maybe some fallen deviled ham.
Oh, yeah. You get some of that.
Go ahead, Mr. Michaels. Tell them where they can find you and what's your effing binge.
Yeah, so the name of our show is What's Your Effin' Binge? We talk to people about what they're currently binge watching. We put a twist on it and take a game show approach. We have to guess at what show it is that you're watching based on a series of clues. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. Doesn't really matter, just adds to the comedy of it. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube, all under the title of What's Your Effin' Binge, or you can reach us at email at what'syoureffinbinge@gmail.com.
Nice. And, of course, you can find me right here on Realm of the Mist Entertainment, where you're going to find this podcast. But, of course, you're also going to find other great quality podcasts. And, of course, our sister channel, Sounds Dicey Gaming, for all your video game and tabletop content needs. And, like I said before, if you want your podcast in audio-only format, you can find Realm of the Mist on Anchor.fm, Apple iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever quality podcasts can be heard. Guys, thanks again for hanging out with us. We'll catch you on the next one where we will be discussing the, obviously, the title reigns of one Ric Flair. Till then, let's get it in the ring. Have a good night, guys.